Hey, what's up guys? So today I wanted to do a top 10 defensive units in Dokkan battle. Now I feel like this is probably going to be one of the most divisive top 10s that I do for my channel. And I just wanted to say that however I make this list, I think that there are many correct ways to make this list. The main reason I'm even making it is not as a definitive, this is correct, and anyone who has any doubts of it are wrong. I mainly want to make this list to sort of have a discussion about the most defensive units in Dokkan, and also as a help towards maybe newer players who are like, you know, just looking online, like who's the most defensive units that I want to get, right? You know, they know that defense is the most important thing in the game, and they're saying, okay, well then who should I be going for? And so I'd want them to, you know, see this video and kind of get a rough idea about like what they should be aiming for defense wise, and also just for discussion. I think stuff like this is really interesting to talk about, and I think this video will have maybe the most differing opinions that I'll probably just agree with. The biggest thing before I even get to the list too I wanted to bring up is that sort of quantifying how good or the best defensive unit in the game is also pretty difficult. A lot of defensive units play different roles. They're not all doing the same thing. Some are absolute monsters in slot 1 but could get torn up in slot 2 or 3, and vice versa. Some are absolute monsters in slot 2 and 3 but can get torn up in slot 1. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. They're both damn well, and it's kind of just a preference, right? And it's really about team build in that sense. If you have both of them, one holding on slot 1, holding on slot 2, then hey, they're both amazing defensive units with neither of them having a weakness at that point. So because of that, I did make sort of a second list here that I am going to come back to, where I feel like I can get a little more in depth with the discussion. Here I put a slot 1, slot 2 and 3, and then here I put slot 1 early, slot 2, because some of these units are great in slot 1 early in the fight, but you're going to want to slot 2 or 3 of them later in the fight, and then vice versa that. So slot 2 early in the fight, but then you can slot 1 them later, build up units, stuff like that. And then here I have any, right? And then theoretically this would kind of be the best, right? I guess if you were gonna judge it on, you know, what is the best, you could say maybe that this slot here would be the best, right? Because they can hold any slot. Another thing I wanted to talk about, sort of a qualification for this list before I get into it. None of this is gonna take in dodge, so dodge does not count for the best defensive unit. While dodge is a defensive mechanic that will help you not take damage, right? If you had a unit that 100% dodged, theoretically that's the best defensive unit because they can never take damage. I kind of wanted to just focus on units who can take a hit and survive, right? Especially for maybe more of a 55% crowd, which part of my channel does really lean into. And so for that sense, a lot of these people don't, you know, a lot of people don't have dodge. I play a lot of units at 55% and I don't have dodge for a lot of these units either. But I've also played a lot of these units at 100%. So I have a, you know, a rough understanding about where both sit at. So I don't want to take into account dodge. I want to take into account these units getting hit. Secondly, I also don't, and these next two are kind of just for one guy, Omega Shenron here. I want to take in sort of, but also for all of them, I want to take in all of their best kind of scenarios. Not incredible. I'm not saying all of them are getting, you know, oh, this unit, usually they're slot 2, but hey, let's say that they're in their best scenario where they're getting Kid Buu, Boo support, and all this stuff. Yeah, they can hold slot 1 now. Like, no, not that. I just mean Omega Shenron's running on a full GT bosses, right? And while that's not the best team, that's going to be his best defensive setup. And I want to just look at him in that setup and how good he is. I don't think any of these other guys really are going to have that setup. Like, right, of course, Amon and Raisin are going to be running setup for them where you'd have Turles and stuff. I'm not really also taking in consideration support either. Like Bulma, of course, she's always supporting, so it doesn't matter. But like, and some of these support units will be supporting, so they're kind of supporting themselves in a way. But I'm not really taking in support really either for these units. But I'll stop rambling and just kind of get into it. I'm going to go through it quick since I'm taking up a lot of time here. But again, take everything sort of here or there, right? And none of this is definite by any means. What makes a, you know, defensive unit good here is not the same for everyone. So I'm going to get into it. At number 10, I did put Vegeta and Trunks. still an incredibly good defensive unit. Their main purpose back then, and as I'm setting them up, I'm going to put them here too. Their main purpose back then and now is hold down slot 1, and that's it. They are going to hold down slot 1 forever. They are amazing for people who need a slot 1 unit. You need a slot 1 unit, Vegeta and Trunks will always hold you down. Now, in the early on in the fight, they can get slapped up, especially some of these bosses now are doing a lot of damage early on. So early on, they actually can take a decent hit. You do need to build them up a bit. But, I mean, they're just the tried and true stacking, guard, slot 1. And you can move them around. Theoretically, they are also able to be put in slot 1 early, or slot 2 early, slot 1 later, right? If you have another bond of parent and child category, ally attack in the same turn, you can then have them guarding 5 turns. So they can guard for any slot for 5 turns, but usually they're a slot 1 unit. Next, I have Golden Frieza. This guy's crazy just because of damage reduction very early on. Now, again, like you can move these guys around. If you're saying Vegeta and Trunks are better than Golden Frieza defensively, I completely get that. Longer fights, I agree. In a longer fight sense, he is better. This is just how I'm ranking it. This is how I kind of feel about it. But by no means am I going to argue if you're like, yo, yeah, Vegeta and Trunks are fucking way better. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, I get that. Because again, Frieza is a different type of unit. He's slot 1 early, slot 2 later. I mean, that's his role. He's going to be holding you down slot 1 completely fine, 0 issues. It's turn 1, this is probably the best defensive unit in the game, and that means something. That has to have some hold for him in sort of the best defensive units discussion. Being quite literally untouchable, a unit that does maybe, if they drop ever a boss that did 2.5 million damage right off the gates, this guy's still tanking it, where all the other units wouldn't be, right? So there has to be some points for him for doing so. So then, and also, even though he's losing, 60% damage reduction, he does still, as long as he's getting his attacks in and his attacks received, he'll be decently tanking after. He'll have 30% damage reduction post super. That's why, again, he's gonna be slot 2 later on. You would then slot 2 him, and he'd be fine. He wouldn't be, you wouldn't lose because of him probably. Next, I'm going to have Vegeta and Goku. These guys are insane, and a perfect example where they're slot 2 and 3 only. You're not running them in slot 1. They will get you killed. They are not a slot 1 unit at all. And some people, that is going to mean less, right? They're going to put a little less value on them because, well, I want more slot 1 units because that is the position that is going to be the most open, right? The one that can take the most amount of damage. So, that's why they're a little lower for me. I like slot 1 units a bit more. It's funny because I have Vegeta and Trunks so low, but you'll see with the rest of the list. But Vegeta and Trunks, they're just not, or Vegeta and Trunks, sorry. Vegeta and Goku, they're amazing slot 2. Slot 2 and 3, and they're untouchable. And another reason they're really good defensively is their revive. That revive is going to protect all units. For that whole turn, no one, like, it doesn't matter who dies, you're good that turn. And so for that reason too, this is part of their defense. This plays into their defensive game completely. But slot 2 and 3, these guys are holding it down insanely well. Next, I have Omega Shenron, right? This one probably he's going to be probably the most controversial spot here. I think a lot of people would just not even put him on the list, right? You're never going to run his team, like, what's the point? But looking at him just purely defensively on a Shadow Dragon or a GT Bosses team for him, he's taking a hit. He's holding on slot 1 with ease, no problems. Like, this guy is going to have 35% damage reduction with, I'd say on average 3 Rainbow Orbs is reasonable. Even if you want to say 2 Rainbow Orbs, 14%. And definitely in the beginning, for first 7 turns, I think 3 Rainbow Orbs is fine, is a reasonable number to see with him. You're around 50% damage reduction. This guy can hold slot 1 damn well, right? And so I think he's gonna be the most controversial pick, though, especially when we see who didn't make the list and who might, especially Vegeta and Trunks being below him, right? Like, it's rough. Again, like I said, I'm not gonna argue with anyone who wants to make arguments about the list. This is more so just a discussion about defensive units in a way. And I think I have to put him on here too. He is definitely just, he's any slot really. that theoretically on his team, he's an any slot character. You can run him any slot and it does not matter. You're probably going to run him slot 1 though, because GT Bosses sucks as a team and you don't have any other slot 1 units. But and also same with these guys, his revive, you know, that's part of his defensive capabilities. That's going to help your team survive a little bit more. Next I have Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Vegeta. Now, not quite them, more or less their standby. That's standby, and again, that shows how they can be. If we're talking about the base unit, you're talking slot 2, you could maybe slot, and then slot 1 like later on. And we're talking like a lot later on, though, to be fair. But I would say they're slot 1 unit if you get into the revive. You get 4 supers, and you transform, and you get into the standby. This guy is probably the best defensive unit in the game. It's either him or Oob. These two are the best defensive units in the game. Enough stacks. Those 4 supers, you know, will give you around enough stacks. This guy is untouchable. I mean, Vegeta standby is untouchable, and you can hold on to this form for 4 turns. So 2 rotations, you can have this out, and this guy will hold down slot 1, slot 2, slot 3. Don't put him anywhere you want. He's not taking damage. This guy, you get hit with a 3 million attack stat, and you're probably living. Like he's that insane. And so like this guy is incredible. Not so much. If I was just saying this form, the base form, he's probably not on the list at all. He's just not doing enough. And then in a sense to try to hurry, let's go on to this Goku, AGL Goku here. This guy's incredible. He is, I think, maybe what more people are looking for, a slot 1 early, slot 2 later, because I think most people run sort of a healthy dynamic of build-up characters and slot 1 characters, right? And so I feel like a lot of people, you're running some of these. Who's a build-up? Like this Goku right here is build-up. Vegeta and Trunks are kind of a build-up. These guys are a build-up. Gohan, if you're running Tech Gohan, would be a build-up. AGL Gohan's a build-up. And so I think you're running a nice healthy mix of build-up and slot 1 off the bat ready units. And so this guy is really good for that because he's also building up, but he's able to hold down slot 1 really early, and he's completely fine to do so. By the time you run out of his guard, which is why I put him as sort of a slot 2 later, by the time you run out though, you're at like 1,000,000 defense, right? You are 1,000,000 defense and you would still be stacking. And so you could probably still say slot 1. I only say slot 2 later is because, you know, let's say you're fighting a insanely tough tech enemy, right? Or the Omega Shenron event, I think a super attack slot 1 would still, you know, slap him up. So, you know, you could say slot 2 later for him, but still, this guy's incredible defensively. Even when his guard wears off, he's not like just a wet noodle that just gets slapped around. Gohan, down here, AGL Gohan, he's not on the list. This guy, amazing defensively, you keep building him up, you build him up, but even if he has like 500k defense, 600k, 700k defense, and you end up just taking a little too much damage, well, he's gonna get slapped around and then you're dead. You know, that'll be what happens. There's nothing you can do about that. So he can be incredibly good defensively. You just need to hold that HP threshold. And so I don't want, like, I feel like that's just gonna hold him back from being, you know, in the full top 10. But by no means, like, every unit you see down here is great defensively. Any new player just kind of like perusing the video. I mean, I know I'm saying this 13 minutes in, but you know, any player coming in, like, these are the units you want to go for. Like, these are all defensive units that are good. All of them are really good in their own sense. And then moving on to the next one, we have Bulma, an incredible defensive support unit. Now, she's the best unit in the game, but mainly for her support and stuff and her defensive abilities. Your defense, there can be some holes, right? So in the beginning, she's fine, right? For the first, how many turns was it again? First 7 turns, she's going to be guarding, she's fine. Just like this Goku, she's fine. But I would also put her in the same of slot 1 early, slot 2 later. But just like the Goku, she's not a 0 by the time you run out of her guard, because then her damage reduction will be building up. Now, as far as I know, her damage reduction works as every turn she's on rotation, it gives you 7. So it's not like Golden Frieza, right? Where Golden Frieza, even when he's not on rotation, he's losing damage reduction. I think hers is only building up on rotation. So by the time you run out of her guard, she'll have, so she'll be on rotation, let's say slot 1, slot 2, or slot 1, slot 3, 5, turn 1, 3, 5, and then 7, and then 9. So you'll have 5 turns of appearance, and that'll give her 35% damage reduction. And a lot of people know then you could just pop her active skill, and that'll give her a ton of defense, and she could still be run in slot 1 with 35% damage reduction and like a million defense or whatever. And then you would finally get into a turn where it's just raw damage reduction, putting you at 35, so then 42% damage reduction, which, you know, maybe you could run slot 1. It's hard to say. Her defense isn't like, you know, we're not talking about Gamma 1, which he is, God, is he an honorable mention that I'm going to make, because he's not going to be in these top 3. This is, we'll talk about him later. Don't worry. Trust me. Yeah. You know, 42%, he has 50, but while he's like at 600, 700k, she's at, you know, 400k before, you know, so she's later on slot 2, no doubt. I think a slot 2 later on for her is good for her. Next I have Amand and Raisin. These guys are just insane in slot 1. Another one is just only slot 1 units. These guys, like, these are one of the best banner units right here, no doubt. These guys are just untouchable in slot 1 from the get-go. From the get-go to the end of the fight, you're never hurting these guys in slot 1. It's just not happening. They're supporting planetary destruction and space traveling warriors, and there's going to be guarding with damage reduction of 20%. Their defense is going to be insanely high. You're building up this right here. They already have the support. They have right there. I mean, they're not taking damage. They're an amazing slot 1 unit, defensive unit. They're incredible. They're just holding down slot 1. It's one of these hold down slot 1 units, and a lot of these, as we get to the top, are just holding down slot 1. I think I'm just going to spoil the next 2. It's going to be Goku at number 2, and ultimately I decided Piccolo probably number 1. Putting them on this list, you know, Goku is a slot 1 only, and Piccolo isn't any. If I'm going to order these 2, I'm definitely going, Goku's going to be here, Amon and Raisin 2, and these 2 are kind of intermixed. I'm probably going to put the 8 years, though, above him. He's alone here. If I'm doing this, I'm doing Bulma, of course, first, then Goku, then, oh, hell yeah, Piccolo above you. But ultimately on this list, I decided Goku, an amazing slot 1 unit. This guy, 50% damage reduction once you're fully transformed. 50% damage reduction, insane defense. Like, he's holding down slot 1 without question. And the other reason is Maju. This guy is making everyone defensive, and just like these guys right here, just like this one, an absolute defensive wall. The only difference is you're only having him for basically 1 turn. You're only getting this guy for 1 turn. Where, at least for this guy, you can have him 2 turns. You can have him for a little bit longer, right? And so this plus just base Goku, this guy's insane defensively. Like this guy's not dying in slot 1, right? He's just never gonna die. But ultimately, I did decide on Piccolo. I think Piccolo just is all around the best sort of defensive for what he does for your team. I think you can run him in slot 1 once he's fully built up. He has the damage reduction early on. He has the He has the guard early on, so you can easily build him up and have him in slot 1, no problem early on. It's not like you have to, risk around and play with him getting hurt. So he's gonna guard and build up, and by the time he's fully built up and runs out of guard, he has 20% damage reduction with 600, 700k defense, which is completely, you can get caught. Like there are some bosses that could slap him up, but I mean, honestly, he's holding down slot 1. Well, he's a slot 1 unit, he's a slot 2 unit, slot 3 unit. It doesn't matter where you put this guy, he's holding down that slot. But the other reason I really decided on it was Orange Piccolo. This guy is just, he is gonna make sure your entire team is safe. 2 of these guys, his defensive capabilities are just incredible. Piccolo's just probably the best defensive. Now, I do want to do some honorable mentions here. Gamma 1. You could put Gamma 1 as high as 3 and 4 in this list. I have no doubts about that. I don't have him on my list. And if I, even just thinking about him, it feels wrong not having him on this list. It really does. If not a Mega Shenron being the most controversial, Gamma 1 is going to be incredibly controversial. And I feel like not having him up here is criminal, but I can't, you only have 1 slot here, but honestly, this guy, you're putting him here. 600, 700k defense, slot 1, 50% damage reduction. He's not getting hurt at all. dude is incredible too. I'm just gonna leave him here at the end. Sorry for people who, you know, if you skip to the end and you're like, hey, that's what the fuck, this is a top 10. Why are these two random guys next to each other? Dude, this guy's incredible. And then these two, Gohan and Goku down here, just similar of a weakness. I mean, Gohan's is you run out, you drop that HP threshold, and he can get killed, and so he's not guaranteed to always be holding down slot 1. And he also builds up kind of slow, so in the beginning he can also get slapped around, even with guard. And then this guy again can get slapped around in the beginning, and you get that first hit. So that first hit could be super attack, and that could hurt you. But you know, it's again, this is not sense zone. Honestly, it could be whatever. This guy, insane after revive. After revive, this guy is insane defensively. But it's just you have to get the revive, and so he's not going to be like defensive god out the gate. You're a lot of times really coin flipping with him, hoping guard comes. Krillin, insane slot 1 unit, just like Mon and Raisin, really good slot 1 defensive unit, but doesn't have the guard like them. So like while he has 60% damage reduction, yeah, you know, he's insane though. Again, all these guys are insane. I'm not holding anything against them. Kale, she's a slot 2 in the beginning, and then slot 1 later on. Her biggest issue is that even on her team, she still will struggle because there's no good slot 1 unit there. And so if, again, I know I'm not looking at their team, right? If I'm going to do that, then this guy doesn't even deserve to be on the list. So just looking purely at her, I mean, she's insane slot 1 once she's transformed. But again, it takes a little bit later to do that. I would probably put her, you know, you can easily put her higher. Again, I am going to argue with 0 people about some changes to this list. This is such a subjective list, and really it's just a discussion, and especially for newer players. Lastly, before I end the video, I kind of want to fill out a little bit more, at least with some of these units. Gamma 1's in any unit, no doubt, and if I'm going to order them, I'm doing that. Well, again, I know I have him, he's not even on the list, right? I get that, so I guess I won't. I'm going to stick with my list, but it feels wrong. It feels so wrong. You could totally talk me out of it. Fuck, you could totally talk me out of it. In fact, you might talk me out of that. I might not even, like, he might even drop down to here. I don't know. Oh, that's hard, man. He's so defensive, though. I'm gonna leave it here, just to quell the masses. Let's not get, I'm gonna not get canceled at like 5 subscribers, okay? So, you know, I'm gonna probably stick to that change. You slot 2 early, slot 1 later. Slot 2 early, slot 1 later. You can slot 1 these guys, but they can get hurt. And by slot 1 later, it's not that much later. It's like turn 4 or 5. It's not like so much later. Like, yeah, some of these units can be real later. Of course, I have him. He's any slot. Krillin, slot 1 god. This Goku, slot 2 early, slot 1 later. Kale, slot 2 early, slot 1 later. And I don't want to really rank these guys. I generally don't really care. These guys are great. Like, don't get me wrong, these are all great, but whatever. This is gonna be kind of like, this is really where I want to stand by. This list. I think this is a really good sort of like for newer players to kind of take in and see, in my opinion. So I'd love to see the discussion, guys. I don't want to start no war, nothing, guys. This could really be changed around however you really see fit. All these units are great in their own ways defensively. All of them play a different role, but I did want to have a little discussion on sort of defensive units and sort of the best ones you can do, and kind of make it a list format so you can get a general idea of who is sort of better than the other, but you guys get it. Okay, I'll stop rambling now. I will catch you guys all in another video. Have a absolutely fantastic day. Subscribe if you want to see more content. Peace out.